Hey guys, today I want to go over parses, and I want to talk about why I don't put a lot of value in parses, why I don't play for parses, and I actually play like parses don't exist, and also how I think parsing has had a negative impact on Classic as a whole, and in parsing culture has not been good for Classic. But first, we need to, establish what is a parse, right? So I got a parse here. I clicked on Baron Geddon. Those were my overall totals. And I can click on a specific fight, and we can see this is what is called a report. So this is the Baron Geddon fight report, and you can see the DPS of a lot of different people, and as well as the damage. And I can click on my character. We see the gear that I used at the time, the enchants. We also can see the damage done, the breakdown of where the abilities came from. So long story short, a lot of data is logged to the site, and you can look through your raids and get a really detailed breakdown of what has happened. But most people talk about the parse, and that's right here, this column, the parse percent. And what this parse percent means is it looks at your DPS and it compares it to other players that are the same class and are performing the same role, so like DPS rogues. And so in this case, on this fight, I did more damage than 95% of all rogues. So that is what people talk about when they say a parse. And when they say they want to improve their parses or they have really good parses, it means they have historical high values for being 95%, 99% of all rogues in terms of doing the most DPS to a raid boss. Now, I think it's important to go over what goes into a parse, because you might see a parse like a 95. Well, how come I didn't get a 99, right? What was holding me back from getting a 99? So this is, I guess, the ranked order, in my opinion, of what contributes to improving a parse or getting a really good parse in general. So number one, world buffs are hugely impactful, and it's really, really difficult to get a really good parse without having full buffs, full consumes. Raid DPS is a huge factor. The faster you kill a boss, the more uptime you have on your cooldowns, the more damage you'll do. Threat, simply put, if you have to stop attacking, you're not going to do much damage. Fight tactics, this one is actually pretty important as well, and it breaks down to how is your guild doing the fight. Are they grouping up all of the enemies that can be cleaved? Are they enemies really spread out so that you have to keep running between them and cost you precious DPS? Those are the kind of factors that can affect your parse. I also have utility consumes. These are hugely important on specific fights, but in general, there's a lot of fights where it doesn't really matter as much. But by utility consumes, I mean using a free action potion on Gehennis. I mean using a restorative pot on Lucifron. Basically any consume that you can take to avoid a mechanic on a particular fight that could CC you or cost you damage. And then all the way down as 6th is gear, and 7th is player skill min-max. What I mean by this is knowing the intricacies of your character and playing your character to the best of their ability, using your cooldowns at the right time. I honestly believe that in general, these 6 factors are going to be bigger indicators of getting a good parse than player skill. And you could put the best player in the world in, if he's got an undergeared character and no consumes and a bad situation in terms of threat, tactics, and raid DPS, they're just not going to do very much damage. And that's the reality of it. And so now to answer the question, now that we kind of have an insight into what a parse is, what contributes to a parse. Now, why do I have a very low opinion of parses, or pretty much don't even care? I don't see anyone any differently depending on their parse, and I don't put any value in parsing whatsoever. And the reason for that is because me personally, I play the game for column number 7. I play the game when I'm going around and I'm raiding. I'm trying to do anything I can to help us kill the boss. I'm trying to perfect my rotation, perfect my movement, make sure every button I'm pressing in every situation was the correct one. I don't really worry too much about some of the stuff that's outside of my control, and I don't really worry too much about some of the more temporary maybe effects like a consume or a world buff, rather than the actual getting down to the nitty gritty of how to play the character. And so that is why I don't put a lot of value in parses. The reason why I don't look to improve my parses is I am trying to look to improve my skill and improve how I play the fights as I'm going in, but I'm not really too concerned with, trying to make sure that I have every consumable known to man, and that I am, coming in with every single world buff. And if it's convenient for me to get world buffs, I'll bring them in, and I'll do a lot of damage with the buffs. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said I actively try and get Songflower every single week, and I actively try and get Dire Maul buffs every single week. Because the reality of the situation is there's no reward for parsing. It's a personal thing. So if it's a personal achievement, if you enjoy doing as much damage as humanly possible, go for it, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I don't get any enjoyment. I tried, and I really seriously tried to get it the best parses I possibly could for months before Blackwing Lair came out, and I just really didn't get anything from it. So I don't really worry about it anymore at all. And I try and do the things that help the raid kill the boss, even if that means I sacrifice DPS, right? I don't care if I'm on a kick rotation, or if I have to do, like, let's say on Major Domo, right? I could vanish cheap shot a ad. The caster mobs you can actually cheap shot. So I could vanish cheap shot, I could kidney shot an ad just to try and reduce raid damage if things aren't looking too good. Of course, that's not going to help the parse. Cheap shot and kidney shot aren't going to increase my damage, but if there's something I can try and do to help the raid kill the boss, that's what I'm going to do. And I even have an example in my most recent Broodlord kill. This is a Broodlord kill. I did literally nothing. 0 DPS. I just did nothing. And that's because during the pull, I needed to go disarm a trap, and the healers and the casters had a trap on them. And I just sat on the trap the entire fight to make sure that the healers didn't get slowed down when they were casting, so that we didn't potentially have a tank die, and we could have wiped. And yeah, you could say in a perfect world, every DPS, range DPS, every healer should know the exact spot where they can stand so that they don't get hit by the trap. But I personally don't know the spot. It didn't seem like anyone in there knew the spot, so I did what was appropriate at the time, and I just sat on the trap. And that's something I will proudly do, or I'll proudly think. In one example, one of our tanks got wing buffeted, and all of our other tanks were dead, and I had aggro of Fire Maul, and so I just moved into position, I evasioned, and I didn't vanish, and then I died. And so I take a lot of pride in that play, because if I didn't do that, we would have wiped, right? But it didn't show up on a DPS meter. It didn't show up any. All I did was position a boss, and I didn't vanish when I could have. And it was the difference between us wiping and not. That's the stuff that I look back and I'm proud of. That's the stuff that I play the game for, right? Not a 99 parse, not a 95 parse. That doesn't do anything for me, right? So that is why and those are the things that I feel like have had a negative impact on the game as a whole. There's a lot of players that don't want to be on kick assignments, that don't want to sheep, that don't want to banish, and every time they're it's like, okay, this is your banish assignment, they're like, can't this guy do it so I can have my parse? I brought world buffs, and so that is something that I think is a negative impact on the game. You constantly see, especially in semi-hardcore guilds, so there's a lot of people that will be really reckless about threat because they're just trying to get the best possible parse. And I've had countless wipes because someone is going really hard just trying to get a good parse, and they didn't check the threat meter, they were reckless, and they pulled threat, and then they killed everyone, notably Vale. But so hopefully this explains why I think that parses don't really have much value. At the end of the day, there's a lot of factors that don't pertain to skill that have to do with the parse. I don't feel the need to spend a lot of money or time on world buffs and consumes when they're not going to help me do anything other than see a damage number increase. And so at the end of the day, I play World of Warcraft for fun. That's the end goal. It's not fun for me to see a parse go up. It is fun for me to try and play perfectly during a fight. So I still give my full effort during a fight, but I'm not going to be caught up with making sure that I have every single detail perfected, especially when these things are not free. They take time, they take gold. I don't like gold farming, right? And I want to try and spend my time doing the things I enjoy about the game. And the last thing I'll mention about the negative culture when it comes to parsing is, the big thing for me is I stream on Twitch. A lot of people come into the chat and they basically receive a lot of grief. This is a very common sentiment now. People think you are selfish if you do not have full world buffs. You are selfish if you do not have everything, fully enchanted. And you are selfish. And that's just a really, I think, bad way to look at things, especially when we're playing a game as casual as Classic, as easy as Classic. And I think that's really the big negative of parsing, is that people have play a lot more selfishly, play a lot more for themselves, and are really focused on just seeing the damage meter and the parse go up rather than the success of the raid and having fun. And one final note, I just want to clarify, if you guys are really hardcore players in a hardcore guild, everyone's on the same page, and you love parsing, go for it. If you're having fun doing it, go for the stars. Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to catch me live on Twitch, check the description below for a link to my Twitch channel.